Alright guys, I'm going to show you guys a trace again today. As it is with rock and surf fishing, it's always evolving, and a few years ago we started fishing with braid and then circle hooks, and then the first trace we all started using was a full metal jacket. But as I say, it evolves and the sport changes, and we're starting to fish more and more with finesse. We've started going to a lighter trace for our species like our rays, etc., especially when you're fishing in clean water. So the new fashion now is for guys to fish with tennis racket string or a very thick fluorocarbon trace. The main reason for this trace is obviously because it's not steel, it's softer, it's well camouflaged, and like I said, when we're fishing in clean water conditions for our flatfish, this is the type of trace you want to use. So it's a very simple trace to make, and I just want to show the new guys out there how to do this trace. And there's a few tricks to it, the way you put the hook on and how you put the crimp on without damaging a trace. But besides that, very simple, very easy, but it's quite important when you're fishing in clean water to be fishing with either fluorocarbon or, like a lot of guys like, with a tennis racket string, which got a brownish tint to it, and then when it lies on the sand it's quite well camouflaged. Right, so I personally like fluorocarbon, so I'm going to make this trace out of a 1mm fluorocarbon. It's my Berkeley Pro Spec I always fish with. And the trace, you can make it as long as you want. I like to make it just like over a meter, 1.2 meters in total. So I've got a piece of trace line here, about 1.2 meters, and I'm just going to cut it off. Right, so that's going to be our length of our trace, and I always start off by putting my hook on first. Now I've got the Berkeley Fusion hook here. The first thing I'm going to do is attach my hook to the trace, and I like to do just a normal figure of 8 on the shank of the hook to attach my hook to my trace line. So you can go 2 or 3. I'm very happy with a double figure of 8 like that. I'm just going to lubricate it a bit and then pull it tight. Right, so we've done our figure of 8. Take my side cutters. Always leave it like a centimeter of tag in there. So we've got our hook attached to our trace. The next step is to put a crimp onto our trace line here. Right, so we grab a little crimp, put it over our fluorocarbon, nylon, or tennis racket string, whatever you're going to use. Alright, so now I like my trace to be about 500 or 600 long from the hook to the crimp. Now this is where it's quite important if you're working with fluorocarbon like I am. If you're using a tennis racket string and stuff like that, it's not that important. But when you're working with fluorocarbon, be very careful not to pinch your fluorocarbon nylon. All the crimp's purpose is it's a stopper. So I just want to pinch it on tight enough so my swivel doesn't slide down when I cast. So as you can see, I'm just like pinching it on very gently without damaging my fluorocarbon, and that's on nice and firm, so that won't move when the swivel pushes against it. Alright, so we've got a crimp on, as I said, 500 or 600 from the hook, and then the next step is to add a bead, and I'll show you what the purpose of the bead is now. So we've got the bead which stops against that stopper there we put in place. Right, the next step is to add our swivel on. So we're going to add a swivel. Now this swivel is for your sinker line. That's going to lay against your bead stopper, and then I'm going to put another bead on the other side of the swivel. Like that. So the purpose of these beads is just to protect your swivel against the stopper there, so you don't damage your nylon when the sinker line or the sinker moves up and down with the swivel. And then the top bead is to protect your top swivel, which you're going to use to attach to your leader line. Right, so we've got that on, and all we need to do now is add the top swivel. As I said, this is the swivel that you're going to attach to your leader line. So once again, I use my figure of 8 knot, double figure of 8, pliers to pull this one tight because it's quite heavy fluorocarbon I'm using. And then cut that tag end off. Right, so that is our trace done. I said that's a new favorite trace that I like to use for fishing for my flat fish species like my honeycomb rays, diamond rays, brown rays, and all those type of fish, especially when the water is clean. I don't like throwing a heavy full metal jacket trace that's too stiff and too hard in the water, and it doesn't present my bait very well. This trace has a lot of movement. As I said, this is fluorocarbon, so it's hidden away well, and it just presents the bait better for those type of fish.